brand older than Rolex and steeped in military history, Hamilton has always intrigued me as a collector. The khaki range in particular, due to its connection to the past, but with a range so vast with so many options, I found myself constantly battling back and forth over my decision. Thankfully, for my 22nd birthday, someone else made that decision for me and presented me with this Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical. I adore it, and I'm going to tell you why. Before going into the watch, let's first take a look at Hamilton as a brand. Founded in 1892, Pennsylvania, United States, they began with pocket watches and by 1912 were noticed for their accuracy and used by the American railroads. During World War I, they were an official supplier to the US Armed Forces and also played a vital role in the aviation world too. By 1942, they completely stopped producing watches for consumers and focused all their efforts on supplying the US Armed Forces during World War II. During this time, they produced over 1 million timepieces. But it wasn't until the 1960s that this watch I now hold in my hand is here today. On October 30th, 1946, the US published a specification, more of an update to the existing mil spec. This new spec was titled Mil W46374 and was described as needing to be accurate and disposable, making them typically much lower in their quality than the previous generation watches but easier to produce and far cheaper. Many brands provided this specificational watch to the US Army and one of them was Hamilton. This new watch acquired the nickname the Hack due to its feature of hacking when the crown was pulled out. A feature we are now accustomed to but was incredibly vital to synchronizing during missions and was born out of true necessity. These watches were made in mass during this period until quartz came onto the scene and made them redundant. That brings us to this watch, more specifically 2019 when the Hamilton Khaki Mechanical received a little upgrade to become this reference we have here, the H69439531. Thankfully, Hamilton didn't directly rip off its existing historic model. Rather, it took heavy inspiration and adapted it to today's standards and tastes. So let's dig deeper and start with the specs. The watch is cased in 38mm of stainless steel and finished with a fine bead blasting. This finish not only looks fantastic and fits well with the aesthetic, it's also practical for better disguising scratches and marks. As you can see, after 9 months of wear, mine still looks brand new. Coming in with a lug-to-lug length of 47mm, it sits well under that 50mm lug-to-lug length that I personally strive for. The lugs feature a slight curve, helping them with wearability, and also feature drilled lug holes for strap changing. Talking about straps, the lug length is 20mm, leaving a world of options for straps. The watch is only 9.5mm thick, making it wear slim on the wrist, even when paired with a thicker NATO strap, which are my straps of choice for this watch. At 3 o'clock, you have a Hamilton signed crown with the iconic H, which is a nice touch. The crown is large and pronounced with a serious grip, making usability a breeze. The case features a stepped bezel, which is also bead blasted like the case, coming up to a sapphire crystal atop the dial, which we'll get onto soon. Flipping the watch over to see the screw down case back, you see a simple amount of text and information with regards to the watch. No exhibition case back to show the movement, which is fine by me. The watch features a water rating of 50 meters, so no diving with this one, though I have heard some say they've swam fine with this watch. However, I probably wouldn't risk it with no screw down crown personally. Now onto the dial, the highlight of the show here. It merges simplicity and legibility, which is vital to a field watch. The dial is black in colour, but it's more of a lighter black, verging on grey in some lights, imitating the fading that happens to a black dial over years of interaction with light. Bold Arabic numerals from 1 to 12, and underneath those is a 24-hour scale. On the outer edge of the dial is a white minute track with triangles in each hour filled with superluminova. The same lume is used on the hands. However, the tone is slightly different and darker on those hands as opposed to the dial. The hands are half sword and half syringe in their style, with a large second hand with a big counterweight of lume at the end. The only 2 pieces of text on the whole dial is Swiss made at 6 o'clock and Hamilton stated at 12. No fuss, no extras and no date. This is one thing that draws me to this watch, the simplicity and the fact Hamilton didn't feel the need to keep adding more and more. The lume on the dial and hands is okay, it's nothing to shout home about and it does the job. Now let's tackle the elephant in the room here. The faux patina. Am I a fan of it? No, not typically anyway. However, on this watch, it really works as a whole package. The subtle yet noticeable colour difference on the dial and the lume, the bead blasting to the case, the overall package of the watch is what works. If they had gone with faux patina and a deep black dial and brushed and polished case, it would look very much out of place. I think that is the important thing when discussing forced aging in design. It has to add up as a whole, or it just looks a bit silly. Here in my opinion, it adds up perfectly. Now onto the movement beating away inside, the Hamilton Caliber H50. Before this upgrade in 2019, this model was using the ETA 2801-2, which featured a 42-hour power reserve and ran at 28,800 beats per hour. At the base of this new H50 is still the ETA 2801-2. They've reduced the beat rate to 21,600 beats per hour and increased the size of the barrel to allow for a superior power reserve of 80 hours. There have been mixed reviews on this movement and a fair few complaints about performance and other issues. Initially mine ran great, only a few seconds out a day, but recently it hasn't been running so well, with up to 40 to 50 seconds a day depending on positions. I would say these improvements to provide a longer power reserve have come at a cost of instability. Now I'm no watchmaker, but I'm sure there's some trade-offs when doing what they did, otherwise wouldn't every manufacturer just do the same? Now for someone like me with multiple watches and lots of vintage watches, this kind of timekeeping doesn't affect me too much personally, but it's a point that needed to be mentioned, as I know for a lot of you out there this is a deal breaker. So let's conclude this. Do I love this watch? Yes, both sentimentally as it was a gift for my 22nd birthday, but also as a watch on its own merits. Buying and selling watches for a living, I was lucky enough to experience this model in both the black dial we have here, but also the white dial, but I just couldn't decide between them. So having that decision made for me was far better. One point of mention is I have a 6 3/4 inch wrist, which supports the watch perfectly fine. Only having a 38mm case size, you think there'd be no issues with wearability, but like I always say, the lug-to-lug length is far more important than the case size. Let me give you an example. The Omega Speedmaster Professional has a case size of 42mm, a whole 4mm wider, but a lug-to-lug length of 48mm. That makes this Hamilton only 1mm shorter in its lug-to-lug length than the Speedmaster. So it's a long watch and something to consider if you have a small wrist. The movement has proven to be a bit of an uncertainty. This hasn't affected me too much as I mentioned, but for a lot of you out there this will be a big problem. I do intend to return to doing a video on this watch after a year and a bit of owning, and let's see where we are then. But for now, I think saying it's an uncertainty is probably best. This watch retails for £395 on the khaki NATO and £445 on the leather NATO. I own both straps and I have to say the khaki NATO is fantastic. I would say save that extra £50 and get the khaki NATO and spend that kind of money on a very well made leather NATO elsewhere. The leather NATO isn't bad per se, but it's just not as good as the fabric NATO. At this price point, with its specs and its design, I feel confident saying this is a perfect field watch. It doesn't require anything else in my books, as long as that movement holds up of course. I recommend this watch, heavily. I don't think anything else on the market comes close with history and heritage too. I'd love to hear down below what you think, if you have this watch and your opinions of what you believe rivals it. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you did like it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.